have Coach Cole, offensive assistant and special teams at the University of Illinois. Thanks for being here, Coach.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, you're at the best university in the state of Illinois. I'm a big Illini fan, so it's awesome. Um, Big things happening down there. I love it. I'm constantly keeping up with it. Big things happening down there. But let's start with you before Illinois. We were talking. You're from the suburbs, and everything. What made you go the coaching route? Was it from playing days, wanting to stay with it? Was it somebody else, or what kind of made that happen?
Yeah, I think just kind of got done playing and just wanted to be around the game and was fortunate to have some connections in that world and I think it's just a cool deal to get a chance to develop young men and try and uh help kids do what you were trying to do. And that's kind of the way I look at it. So just kind of was fortunate to be around good people and been loving it ever since.
Now, if I keep track. Where did you play your college ball at? Remind me.
Played at Arkansas. At Arkansas.
Okay. Um, Now, were you played at Waubonsie Valley? People that don't know, that's a suburb high school. I know it's technically Aurora, but it's Naperville. Let's be honest, it's technically Naperville. Um, Good sports school. Like me and my wife were trying to buy a house right by there because I was like, I would love to send my kids to Waubonsie. And I know you hate Nequa, but to me it was like Waubonsie or Nequa. Like I wanted them to go somewhere in there. But it's good football school. It's good basketball school. It's good sports. Um, you play there. Was it a scholarship offer? Was it a walk-on offer? What kind of led you to go all the way to Arkansas? Because that's far away from the suburbs all the way down to Arkansas.
Yeah, so it was a walk-on opportunity that I kinda had. I went to camp up there and, was, fortunate enough to just get the opportunity to walk on and, just tried to do my best to make the most of it. So, definitely loved my time there and, I grew up a big Arkansas fan. That's kinda where my family's from, so that was always kinda my dream growing up and was just fortunate to have the opportunity.
So we were talking before, like I walked on, I couldn't hack it. I tell the kids like mentally, I just didn't do it. And it was at Eastern Illinois, not as big as Arkansas. So you walk on. What's that process like for people that don't understand? Because some of these high school kids are like, "Well, I'll just walk on," and it's like, "Well, no, you're not just gonna walk on. Like they have to kind of want you and say, okay, your preferred walk on, or like you try out and they like you, and that's a super small percentage. If 20 kids try out, they take two. So what was that like? And then that process, and then just to maintain it, right? Because when you're a walk on, they could say they don't want you. So to keep that going. So what's that like for people that may not know how that goes?
Yeah, I mean, the process is the whole deal is you just gotta find a way to get the opportunity and, some guys do it through tryouts on campus. Some people have kind of preferred walk-on opportunities where the coaches like you, but don't think you're good enough to put on scholarship and, they still want you to be a part of the roster, and so um, my situation was kinda interesting, I guess. I didn't try out, but I was a regular student for my first semester, and they basically kinda told me that I would have some sort of opportunity my second semester as a student, so that was kinda what I did, and, I think you said it, the process of, um, keeping that opportunity and staying on the roster is difficult. They're pretty quick to get rid of guys, honestly. And so there's definitely a piece where you're trying to just earn people's respect and do whatever you can to provide some value. And so I think when I was first kind of getting into it, just whether it was the weight room or I mean I was on the look team. I think just trying to provide value in any way was kind of my thing. So but definitely super difficult to just stay a part of the
Mhm.
roster, especially nowadays with so many different things happening, roster size and just numbers changing. So
Well, that was that's a big topic of. It's almost like they're eliminating walk-ons, right? Like you're getting more scholarships, but the roster size is going a certain way. And like I listen to Coach Bielema like he's Jesus. If there's an interview, I'm watching it. And he was like, "Well, I was a walk on at Iowa, so he loves it, but now it's changed. So for you as a walk on, what's that like? Like, yeah, more scholarships, but these kids still need opportunities. So, like, what's that thought process? Like, I was a walk on, and now they're getting rid of it essentially up at the D1 level.
Yeah, I mean, I think, from my perspective, I would say it's really unfortunate. I think some of the best stories in sports have come from walk-ons, and, I was fortunate enough to play with some really good walk-ons, guys that ended up being really, really good players for Arkansas, and, I've been around a really bunch of really good walk-ons since I've been coaching, so, I think after going through that whole process and just it was almost like a game within a game. That's kind of what I always said about it. It's upsetting to see kind of where we're at with some of that stuff, and some of these kids won't have the same opportunity that I had, which was to get your foot in the door and
Mhm.
just work your way up and try and prove yourself. So I think that piece is unfortunate. Always for student athletes, getting what they deserve in terms of money and things like
Mhm.
that. But in terms of the roster size stuff, I just think it's unfortunate that you'll miss out on a lot of those guys that maybe weren't big time highly recruited guys in high school, but end up being really really good football players. And so I think those awesome stories you see, on ESPN, you'll miss out on a lot of that. So that piece is definitely unfortunate.
So your family's from Arkansas, but you grew up in like Big Ten country, essentially. You grew up. Um,
Yep.
what's SEC ball like? I've never watched an SEC team live. What's is because we hear it all the time, Big Ten or SEC. What's that like? What's SEC environments like?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I grew up a really really big Arkansas fan, and clearly no one in Illinois was rooting for the Razorbacks. So I was kind of on my own a little bit, but it was good because all my friends were Big Ten fans, Ohio State, Michigan State, Illinois, and so like the arguments growing up were always, well, who's the better conference? Is it the Big Ten or is it the SEC? And truthfully, I think for a while, I personally think it was the SEC, just in terms of the era of college football we were in when I was growing up. But
Mhm.
I think you look across the board now. It's funny because really, like they're kind of mirror images of themselves. Like I think in terms of like dominance right now, I mean, I think you're going to see the most parity you've ever seen in college football,
Mhm.
just because it's hard to retain players, and some would say that the playing field is more level, with what's kind of happening in terms of revenue sharing and the NIL world. So I think that's kind of changed over the past couple of years. But I think if you look at both conferences, there's some really really cool traditions and really really cool environments. And so I was kind of fortunate enough to get that in the SEC as a player and
Mhm.
get to see some really cool places and be a part of some awesome rivalry games. And so that was just an awesome experience. And I'm excited to see the Big Ten, history and rivalry games, from a coaching standpoint now. So, but I think you take a look at both conferences, there's so many good teams and so many good traditions. And I think that's why they're, to me, the two premier conferences in college football right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Because I forgot how young you were. I'm way older than you. I'm super much older. But yeah, growing up, it was always um, the Big 12 was like your high flying. They'll score in the regular season, and then they'll lose a couple games, and then Big Ten stumbled. Like you'd have Michigan and Ohio State, sometimes Penn State, but the rest kind of were just floating. Then there was SEC where it was Georgia, Alabama, and all of them, and so there was a point where it was SEC. Like they're tougher, they're bigger, they're stronger. Big Ten is more finesse looking football now. Big 12 scores a lot. Pac 12 was considered super soft and all that stuff. And then the more it's progressed, the Big Ten, I think, is fine. Like you said, Big Ten is finally like right there where it's the recruiting has gotten good. I heard this the other day and I never thought of it was like the Big Ten is east to west coast now. So when you talk about recruiting, they're able to go all over. SEC kind of sticks to the south, and so I think that kind of leveled it a little bit where you guys can, well, if you're playing Rutgers in the East Coast, you can recruit or talk to kids while you're out there. If you're at USC, you can do all that. If you're in the SEC, you're kind of landlocked there. Like, yeah, you add Texas, but it's kind of leveled it out where now they're the two best and they're actually very physical. Like with the resurgence of Illinois, Indiana, and stuff like that, it's kind of finally gotten back to that point, if that makes sense. Especially when I was a kid, um, you had the Illinois like, oh, we went to the Rose Bowl the next year, we only won 4 games, and then this and that. Like it just is always the standard was Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, and that was it. A little bit of Michigan State, um, but I agree with you. Like SEC when I grew up was like Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Tim Tebow, and all of them. It was you're making me feel old. I'm thinking back. I'm like, oh my god, I'm really old,
Yeah, I
really
think,
old.
I think the biggest difference now that we kind of talk about in the coaching world is just, I think when when the SEC was dominant for that period of time, like you go and look at some of those national championship teams that Alabama had, and you just look at the depth across the board at each position, like they're just so many guys that you can throw in there and play, and so I think my experience, from a playing standpoint was like you get to, week 7 and 8 and it's just there's just no breaks and I think you get just worn down and so that's why I think the difficulty of the conference was so hard just because everyone had so much depth and now which just with where the portal's at and the recruiting piece, it's just totally different, and so guys don't have that luxury anymore because it's just hard to keep guys around, and so I think that's why, you've seen it level out so much over the past, 3 or 4 years, to the point where the Big Ten's won the last two um, national championships. So I just think that's the biggest thing is just the lack of depth that people can have nowadays.
So you walk on, your playing day's done. You turn to coaching. Was it at Arkansas or was it at a different school when you started?
So I student assisted at Arkansas just for my my last spring. After I'd finished playing, I finished in the fall, and then had one more spring left of school, and kind of student coached for that period of time, and then I was at TCU directly
Okay.
after that. So for that fall, so.
How'd you get into TCU? Was it that you because sometimes you have to know somebody, but sometimes it's hard work. You get noticed, but in this crazy world where it's constant turnover, sometimes you have to know somebody. Was it just from playing days, or was it just they needed somebody and you hopped on it?
We had so the offensive coordinator Kendall Browse at TCU was my same offensive coordinator
Uh-huh.
at Arkansas, and I was obviously close with him and some of the guys on his staff, Mark Anthony and uh, or I'm sorry, Mike Anthony and Mark
Mhm.
Kala, and so obviously just being close with those guys, I think they were nice enough to kind of let me come on and work at TCU. So.
So, what was something about taking that step forward into coaching? Was there anything that took you by surprise? Like I didn't know it was going to be like this, or were you? I knew it'd be like this, or was there anything that's like, man, I wasn't like that first year, like I wasn't ready for this and had to learn it a lot.
Yeah, I think I mean there's a bunch of things that I was probably unaware of that I just had to learn over time, and I think probably the biggest thing, I think the level of detail that goes into it. You just don't think about the simple things of something like setting up a drill, running a drill. Like I think as a player, sometimes you get in just a practice mode where you don't think about the little things of how organized is the practice, how do things get set up, and so those are the things that I think my first couple of years I was just kind of all over the place trying to learn. So was fortunate enough to learn from some good people. But those are just a couple things that I felt like I was definitely kind of shocked by.
Yeah, I mean, I never coached college, but high school, I thought I knew it all, and then I went straight to varsity sports, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't realize the amount of film I have to watch. I didn't realize, like, you can't just have these same drills. There has to be, adapt these drills into different things. You have to then on top of it, you have to be a psychologist to kids. You have to be their therapist as well. You have to, doing this at the high school level. Hey, we got to wash jerseys. We got to paint the field. And I know you guys may not do that, but there was a lot that went into it. And then I helped out Eastern when Dino Babers was there and Jimmy G. I helped out spring ball. Even then, just helping them out for the spring, I was like, oh my gosh, the amount of even drills, like the amount of detail that's going to that drill. Um, the details of where the cameras are located, make sure it's the practice scripts, um, just the and then like run like a well-oiled machine of like, as soon as that horn blows, you better be here and the details of that. And it's just like, oh my gosh, never thought about that. And these college coaches, man, I tell you, you guys like I was like at high school level, we couldn't do this, but the college level, the amount of detail and preparation and the hours is unbelievable.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
no question, no question. So I think that was definitely something I had to learn my first couple of years. Mark Calla was a guy at TCU who was just really helpful with some of that stuff, kind of teaching me. So, but that was definitely a shock.
So how'd you end up at Illinois? You're at TCU for a little bit. How'd you end up back in the home state? I know you were an Arkansas guy, but it is like coming home a little bit. Like, I'll come back to Illinois. You're at University of Illinois. How did that happen?
I mean, I knew a couple of the people on the staff, and was just kind of had a couple connections there, and was fortunate enough to have the chance to be closer to home and wanted to see something different and be around a different staff. And it was a good chance for me to grow my network in that regard as well. So just kind of ended up working out for me. And, I've loved every bit of it so far. I think Coach Beelan just does an unbelievable job of, just treating his people the right way. And, I think the biggest thing that I've seen so far for, when it comes to working for him is, he's the hardest worker in the room, and he kind of sets the tone for everything. And that's something that's really, really special, especially for a guy that's been doing it for, I think 20 plus years as a head coach or something like that. So I think, you see a guy like that who's been around and he's still the hardest worker in the room that's getting there early and leaving late. That'll make you work harder, and that's something that you want to be a part of. So loved every bit of it so far.
Was there any adjustment period of like learning the coaches? Because I've been on different coaching staffs, and I'm like, yeah, the football stuff's there, but it's like gelling with the staff, like especially if it's a staff that's kind of already been together for a little bit. You kind of have to find your way. How welcoming were they? Was that an adjustment period, or were they like, hey, let's rock and roll?
Yeah, they were super welcoming. Had zero issues there. I think that was one of the things that drew me over there was just how tight everybody was, and everybody's on the same page all the time, and that starts with Coach B. And so I think I kind of took it upon myself a little bit to try and make sure I knew everybody's name. And it seems like a little thing, but I know that's really, really important in this world. And obviously guys are moving around all the time, and you're going to be around a bunch of different people. So I think it's really important to make sure you get to know the guys you're working with. And so that's kind of something I've been working on these first couple months, just being over there with the new staff.
So, I've been a Illini fan my entire life. I know everything that happens. We've had a lot of down moments. Coach B came in, that COVID right after that COVID time, and is slowly getting it there, like the best way he can in the new world. Like he had to adjust, the whole staff had to adjust. It's finally kind of getting there. Is there noise around the team right now about the expectations? Because like last year, they were ranked in the college football, rankings at one point. stumbled a game, so then they lose, the 3 games that kinda knocked it out. But there's a lot of talk of Illinois kind of being that they're saying they're like the new Indiana, like they're gonna kinda have this run. Is there a lot of noise around that, or do you guys try to keep that away? Like, "Hey, it's cool that we're talked about, but, like, we have to still do the job."
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some high expectations, which is an awesome spot to be in. I think for us right now, if you ask anybody on our team or on our coaching staff, like, we all look at it as it really doesn't matter. It's all about who can go out and prove it. And so, we think that we can have a special year, but right now we're 0-0, and we're just trying to focus on winning the first one, and doing things to prepare ourselves to go have the type of season we know we can have. So, I think it's always a blessing to have big time expectations, and it's awesome for the university to have that kind of hype around the football program. And I think for us, we're just trying to make sure we do our part in the off season, and trying to make sure our preparations to the point where we feel good about having the magical season we're hoping for. So.
Now I have a dumb question. I went and watched spring practice, not this year, but last year. I went, and I'm there because there was a coach's clinic. I went the last day. I was visiting my parents, just drove right over to Champaign. Um, me and Coach Bart Miller talk from time to time. He's been on here a couple times. He's like, "Yeah, come to practice. You can be on the field and all that stuff," which was awesome. Like I got to walk up to drills, and there was former Illini players there that played for like Ron Zook and a couple others after. And I went up and talked to them. I'm like, "Oh, this is awesome. I get to meet players I watched on TV and stuff like that." And they said, "Man, I kind of wish I was playing right now." And I said, "Well, why? You missing?" He goes, "Well, I'm just watching practice." And it's like a well-oiled machine. Like the coaches are all on the same page. They bounce from drill to drill. There is no explaining. Like they just jump into it and go. And at the end, they were like, "Hey, Steve, let's go talk to Coach B." So I went up to him and I'm like starstruck. I'm like, "Oh my God, it's Coach Bielema." Go talk to him. And they said, "We wish we were playing for you because it was not like this, in the mid 2000s." Um, do you find it like that, or is that kind of the norm? The line I players are like, maybe this was the norm and we just never knew, but just the amount, how well practice was run, is that something Coach B does very well, or is that kind of like the norm in college football? Like, or was his way like, hey, yeah, he's ready to go.
Yeah, I think me personally, I've just been really fortunate. I've been around some really, really good programs early on in my coaching career. And, I think Coach Pittman did an unbelievable job at Arkansas, from an organization standpoint. And, same thing with Coach Dykes at TCU. So those are two guys that I was around before. And, obviously getting here to Illinois, is absolutely no different. I think the other thing too is, um, you got to give our kids at Illinois a lot of credit. Like when it comes to having practice run smoothly, these are guys that want to be out there, and are really really focused on perfecting their craft. And so when you have good kids, it makes you right on a lot of those things. And so we have really really good kids that are very coachable, and that's a big piece of it. But it definitely does not happen by accident. There's lots of different things that go into creating a practice script, and obviously going from drill to drill, and making sure transitions crisp. And that all starts with Coach B, just making sure that everything is going to run smoothly, and that we're all on the same page. And so um like I said, I've been fortunate to be around three really good programs, so that's kind of the world
Yeah.
I know. But yeah, it's so far at Illinois, it's been just really, really, really good to see that. I think our guys appreciate how organized it is, and obviously hope to get a lot done during those practices as well.
So you were at TCU. I know that Coach Dykes kind of an air raid background, but also has adapted it. You were in that system a little bit. I know Coach Pittman and them, they kind of, when you guys were there, again, you're making me feel old because I watched all those games on TV. I love Coach Pittman. So you're on the team and I'm old watching it. Um, runs that, no huddle, fast pace type of thing when they were there. So you go to Illinois. Are they kinda open to any ideas that you've brought from that to them, or is it if you see anything, are they open to you saying something to them right now, or is it, "Hey, we know what we're doing," like, we kinda know what we're doing," or are they open to, like, ideas that you did there?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been so just hectic just trying to get
Oh,
here
that's
and
true, that's
make
true.
sure, I'm doing, my job to the best of my ability, so we haven't necessarily talked about a lot of those things, but, um, I think Coach Lonnie does an unbelievable job offensively of adapting to personnel and trying to, create matchup problems for the defense, so, um, yeah, I think, obviously I believe in what we're doing with Coach Briles, at Arkansas and at TCU, and I think, I feel no different about Coach Lenny and what we're doing in Illinois. So a couple things that are a little different, but I think both guys are just really, really good offensive minds. So usually those guys know best. So
Was it easy being a running backs coach in the air raid type system? It's, swing routes, it's this, it's that. I always ask air raid guys, like, "Isn't it easy just to coach running backs a little bit?"
yeah, there's a whole lot of detail that goes into it for sure. But I think the running backs coach that I was working with, Jimmy Smith, who's just a really really good football mind, and has been at Arkansas and was a really successful high school football coach. So he's a guy that's called plays before. So from an offensive standpoint, I think those guys are getting a really really elite level of detail. Even though they may not be, the same as being in a ground and pound type of offense. I think Coach Smith always did a really, really good job of just making sure, guys are staying involved. And, I think I also learned about the importance of checking the ball down and letting our guys make people miss in space. So that was something that, you kind of get from that style of play as well.
Yeah, I got promoted, I guess, to OC in the spring. I don't know if it's promotion because now it's more headaches and you're responsible. I'm adapting, like, we're running air raid passes, and I'm trying to get our running backs to or our quarterbacks to learn, like, that's your best friend right there, like, if like, I don't care, like, "Well, coach, I'm like, "No, no, 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 he'll get 4 to 5 yards, it's okay," and trying to explain to them that that's an extension of the run game. It's no different than a rocket, toss, sweep, anything like that. So I'm really trying to, but the running backs on every pass play are like, "Well, this is pretty easy. I only have this," and I'm like, "You think it's easy, but you still got to get open. You got to make a guy miss." And then if they drop it, I go, "It's not so easy now, is it?" And then whatever. Like, it's kids will be kids. Um, but I just found that air raid stuff was really good at, like you said, giving the balls to guys, and sometimes the running back might go to the slot and a receiver comes to running back and just try to figure like it's so fun. It's so fun to do that. Um, but I knew you guys weren't like true air raid at TCU. It was kind of like Lincoln Riley, like we're gonna run this, but we're gonna run the ball too, like GT counter and all that. Um, but anybody that coached like Mike Leach that I've talked to, I'm like, that's got to be the easiest position for Mike Leach because it was just shoot routes.
Right, right.
Because you may not be old enough for that Texas Tech game in Texas. I remember watching that in high
Oh
school.
yeah, Michael Crabtree caught the
I was
game
in
winner.
high
I
school,
watched it.
man.
Yeah, I watched it in my living room.
Oh god. That's what made me fall in love with, like, the spread, was that game.
Yeah.
I was like, "If I ever coach and I'm in charge, we're running some sort of spread." Uh,
Yep.
what what advice would you give to a person that wants to coach in college? Like me, I thought I could do it by going the high school route. I was like, "I love high school ball." I'll get there, and I realized when I was, like, 27, I was like, "It's not gonna happen. Like, this is the bad route." Um, what's an advice for coaches? Because what I'm seeing is people want it now, right? Like they want to be the position coach, they want to be this. But like you learned, like you have to be a student assistant, then you go here and then you do this. So what's an advice for like somebody that's going to look to do it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. if it's a kid that's coming out of high school and that's kind of what he wants to do, I think, wherever you go to school at, you have to somehow find a way into the building. There's a guy that I was with at Arkansas, who was working our equipment room as a student and, worked his ass off and, was fortunate now he's coaching college football at Duke. So, I think it's really just all about finding a way to get your foot in the door. And then, once you get in the foot in the door, then, the work stands for itself. So I think it's just all about your work ethic and, some of the best advice I got. Was, from a guy, Dan Enos, was just, you have to make yourself so valuable to the point that, coaches can't not have you around. And that's how you get promoted. Because eventually, if you're doing well, a new job, a new opportunity is going to come, and the coach that has you in the room, if he feels like you're not a guy that's expendable, he's going to find a different opportunity for you. And so that's kind of my best advice is to do whatever you can to get your foot in the door, and then once your foot's in the door, do everything you can to provide some sort of value that can't be replaced. So that's probably my best advice.
Yeah, one advice I got was for coaching was whatever job you're doing in that moment, treat it like it's the most important job that you have in that moment. So if it's like me, I'm in charge of all the coaches on offense now. So I'm like, hey, I need this breakdown of what happens when they're in a 3-3 stack, like exactly what happens. And if that's what they're watching, that to treat that like it's the most important thing, because it might come down to a 4th and 1 and we got to score to win. Me, when I'm coming up with practice plan, like that's the most important thing. What we have to work on. And if you treat it that way, even if you hate it, like, do I love coming up with practice plans? No, I'd rather just go out there and go. Do I love having to be in charge of that and the weight room and doing this? No, but I'm going to treat it like in that moment, because if you walk in there and those kids feel that it's not important to you, and you sniff that out very quickly,
No
very quick.
doubt. No
Um,
doubt.
Another thing I learned was when I do a presentation, I can't make it 10 minutes long. Kids have an attention span of 2 minutes. So when I presented my offense to the kids, it was just one page with like maybe 8 bullet points, and I went through it in like 2 minutes. And
Yeah.
then, believe it or not, the kids at the end were like, "Could you do that again?" I was like, "Nope, we're done." Like even I had to move on, and I was shocked that the kids even asked. And that's the other advice I got was, "You'll lose them. You'll lose them." And this was 2010. I was told that even before TikTok and all that, even 2010, 11, I was told like, "You'll lose them. You'll lose them."
Yep.
And now that we're in 2025, it's even worse. It's even
Yeah, definitely
worse.
lose them for sure.
Um, was there any culture shock for you going to Champaign, Urbana, or like this is a not a big town, but it's not a small town either?
Yeah, truthfully, it reminds me a lot of the college town that I went to school at in Fayetteville. It's a smaller town that everything kind of revolves around Illinois sports, and so that was something that I was familiar to me and that I like about Champaign. And I don't think it was too big of a culture shock. I think it was kind of a combination of what I had in college with it being a small college town and what I grew up in, um, just being in the Midwest and being in the cold again. So it was just a combination of those two things, probably.
Be careful of Green Street, after midnight. That's all I'll tell you.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Not that I hung out there a lot or anything. I'm just, uh, you know. And there was a place, I don't know if it's still there. I told Coach Miller, it's an offensive lineman's dream. I don't know if it's still there. It was called Fat Sandwich, and I don't know if it's still there.
It's still there. It's still there. So I've had it.
All
It's a
right,
good
now we're
spot. It's a good
talking.
spot. Yep, yep.
Is the Insomnia Cookie still next door, or is that gone?
I'm not sure if Insomnia is next door. I know there is an Insomnia cookie somewhere. I haven't been quite yet, but I'm sure I'll eventually make it over there
Oh,
for sure.
we discovered that place in high school, and that's an offensive lineman's dream place.
No question. No question.
And I'll tell you a funny story. The high school wrestling meet was going on one time. I think I was a senior. We're sitting there eating. All of a sudden, a wave of wrestlers come running from the assembly hall over there because they don't have to diet anymore, and they run straight into Fat Sandwich
Yeah.
and and just swarmed it. And I remember showing my now wife, my girlfriend at the time, going back. We visited a couple times. I show her the menu, and she goes, "How the can you eat this stuff? Look at this." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Hey, hey, you won't move for 2 days, but it's delicious."
No question. No question.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was still there. That's funny. Uh,
Still there.
uh, I don't know. I know bars got closed down from my time. I wasn't smart enough to go to the University of Illinois, but I hung out there. That's what you did.
Nothing wrong with
Uh,
that.
because when you were in high school, you went to like the mall side where down Neal Street, that you got the mall and businesses. Then once you got old enough, you went over to Green Street and all those places.
Yep.
And then you'd visit from Eastern because Eastern to there is only like 40 minutes. So if you got friends at the U of I, hey, we're coming up, and you go up. The only time I won't go there is St. Patty's and unofficial. I won't touch. You'll see U of I. I'm not touching it. Not going.
Yep.
You'll see. It's a madhouse.
Gotcha.
Madhouse. People get pulled over for jaywalking, coach. They'll be jaywalking and they get pulled over. And I'm like, nope.
Oh, wow. Wow. All right. I gotta be on my toes. No jaywalking.
only on that day will they do that.
Gotcha.
Well, coach, I appreciate you coming on. I know you got to scoot, but I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me.